What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Marks of a Man podcast, a production of Men Build Men. This is going to be a continuation of our buddy, Daniel Rojas, and his testimony, sort of a third episode, third session. So it's good for us to be back here in the studio, man.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure for me.
He's been still on the road. We're sort of in different attire from our first interview session because he's been on the road. He continued to move about the states to try to make your ministry known. The Last Door org.
Yep.
thelastdoor.org. So we're going to pick his life story up. Daniel, when we were last discussing you, well, just sort of to recap, if you haven't heard his life story from the other previous two episodes, definitely want you to step back, listen to his life story. But Costa Rica, he was born in Argentina, came to Costa Rica, got himself saved by Jesus in Costa Rica. But prior to that, lived on the streets, was part of working in corruption, hitman, collector, mixed martial arts. Definitely an interesting life story, right?
Yeah, interesting is a word. It's just a lot of things that the person sometimes you wish never happened, but in God's hands, he can use all those things.
Right on. So this episode, we're going to pick up when he went to Bible school and he gave his life to Jesus or got saved. So I'm going to ask you, Daniel, for the listeners and the viewers, tell them what happened in your life.
What happened basically was I was so full of anger. I was so full of all these things because of what happened to me before, nobody being there to help me and me having to actually come up by myself, right? And even discovering myself, discovering my strength, discovering all what I could do through the martial art. And I started to fight in the streets and all that. Understanding and pretending that nobody else was going to hurt me ever again. And in order for that to happen, I have to be the strongest guy, the meanest guy, So when I went to this youth camp, to where I went, my desire was to go there and fight God. That was what I wanted to do. How do I fight God? Not letting other people come to him, right?
Gotcha.
But through that, even though I heard about God, I heard about church and all these things, the preacher started to speak about sin. And he described sin. And like I said before, he described it in the way, like it was heavier for some people than others, depending on your action.
Gotcha.
Let me just say something very quick here, right? I can easily see and understand all the sins and all the bad things that I've done because I did a lot of bad things. Let me tell you that, okay? God's grace was just amazing, because, forgive me for all of my sins. But then later in life, and I'm going to just make a little parenthesis there, I got married and I got my children. I have 2 sons and I have a daughter. And when it comes to sin, right, even though they're sinners, when you think about their sin compared to my sin, it's a whole different story. Yeah. So because of that, I did understood about how heavy was the sin and all what it produces in you. And anger was part of that. And the one thing, that was missing there was actually peace, but not the peace that you think, like it was just like a mental tranquility, like just being in calm with yourself. And I was angry all the time. I understood sin, but I didn't know how to get rid of it. And the preacher was kind of smart because he kind of was giving you little by little every day, not giving you the whole gospel the first day, just giving you little by little. So that helped me to process and face myself, through the process. And then Friday, last day of this youth camp, he actually spoke about the salvation. And he used this illustration where he says he was in the pulpit, and behind the pulpit, he grabbed this clay basil.
Yep.
Right? And he was standing right in front of me, and he pointed the basil and said, "This is your life, all right? And this is what you have done with your life." And he smashed it down on the floor. Pieces went all over the place. And he says, "That's what you have done with your life. And now you are worried, or you're thinking how you're going to put your life together, how you're going to put all those pieces together." And that was my problem, to conciliate how am I going to get better.
Yeah.
How am I gonna get all these physical, emotional, mental, everything that was completely broken? How can that come together to just one piece and be in peace? Right? Impossible. And then he came back to the pulpit and grabbed another clay pot, but this one was different. This one was painted, right? Beautiful. And then he says to everybody, let me tell you something. God is not in the business of putting together broken pieces. He's in the business of making new creator.
Yeah.
He said he doesn't want to fix your all broken pieces. He wants to give you a new life. You see, there's no way you can be in peace with your old person. There's no way, simply no way. The only way for you to be in peace with yourself, right, is to go back to your creator. Kill the old man. Be God's son. I received Jesus in my heart that day. And the change, the growth took place, but the feeling in that very moment, understanding that I say, I'm safe, I'm not longer the person I used to be, and I don't have to, right? I'm in peace.
Yep.
And that's when
New
I started.
creation.
A new creation.
Yeah. Second Corinthians 5:17. See if I can quote it by verse. I don't think I can quote it by memory. That we're a new creation. I don't have to look that up. Maybe the producer can put that in the bottom line since I blew it and I can't quote it. 2 Corinthians 5:17. That we got a new creation, right? A new flesh, new heart in you. So this happened in your life, and you went there with your sister. And then what happened as a result of your time here at this camp when you received Jesus and you're now a new creation? What's next?
Well, immediately right there, I got this very happy emotion right there, where I say, I like this. I want for all of my friends to actually have the same thing, right? So I ran and I told my friends and I told the guy who I was working for and all that, and they all laugh at me, right? So that's when I lost my friends, right? So I was finishing high school in that moment. And that's when I decided to go back to the same place because they also have a Bible school there. So I went back to Bible school so I can actually learn more about that. And that's when I learned about the concept of serving God. See, before I knew nothing about that. I knew there was churches and pastors and maybe heard about missionaries, but never really understood the whole concept, right?
Right.
But then later, because here's the thing, when I got saved, the very first thing that changed was one thing that I promised to God. Now, I know God doesn't take promises, so you don't negotiate with God. You know, we know that. But I say to God, I don't want to hurt people no more. I want to help people now. Knowing nothing, right? Went back home, lost my friends, went back, to Bible school now. And that's when I started to learn about all the Bible and God and everything. Now, I do have to be honest here with one thing. I believe it was very positive, the negative impression that I have in Christianity at the very beginning of my Christian life. What do I mean with that? When I first went to Bible school, I met maybe some of the most, superficial and hypocrite people that will call themselves Christian. And that brought me to understand that Christianity is not about people. It's about God. And people will always be people. And we all are in the same process. Not because I was saved and not because now I'm a Christian means that I'm perfect.
Yep.
No, still in the shop. Still, some mechanics have to be done, right? And then I understood, which was very positive for me, was to see the negative of other, people there. So I understood it's not about people.
Yeah.
It's about God. God doesn't change. He doesn't take part, right? Sides. He's always God. And that's when I understood it's not about people, it's about God. And I decided to follow God, even though when I may see people doing things they shouldn't be doing, I will understand that they are still struggling with some things in their life. I don't agree, but I'm not following them.
Do you remember when you were making some of those decisions, what you were thinking or what solidified your decisions or why you became convicted of your beliefs? Why did you decide, regardless of what other people were doing?
I would say yes. I would say this. I remember specifically a moment when some of the people that we all would consider to be the most spiritual, thinking like professors and some of the pastors and missionaries that were at that place teaching, I saw them being so hypocrite. And I thought, like, why would somebody like them be so far from what they speak, from what they teach?
Yeah.
And in that moment, I thought that it was all just a good experience, but it wasn't real. But then I met a man who was dying, literally dying, not in the moment, but he was dying of AIDS, of all the bad decision that have done in his life. And even though with all the horrible decision he made, he was so thankful to God for the little bit of time that he had still on earth, right? He wasn't loud. He was in his 40s, I would say, right? He was not biblical, not biblically wise, but the little thing he knew about God, he would just shine. When he would say, God is awesome. God is awesome. And that brought me to that point, when I thought, you know what? If this guy, after all what he has gone through, was able to understand, that the real deal is actually in God. And these people, maybe that has everything that they ever wanted it, are so far from God.
Yeah.
So it's about who you're aiming to. And the thing was God. So I remember that very well,
Right on.
there. So
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that story. As I was listening to you, I was also thinking, obviously, the Marks of a Man podcast, we continue to try to talk about marks and characteristics of men that influence and impact and shape. It's pretty interesting how this man's joy had an effect on you at this time that you were trying to formulate, do I believe what I'm encountering? And you're beginning to make convictions about what's next. I think that's what I was trying to bring out is like you had this experience, you have some emotion. Now you're beginning to observe the behavior of people that say one thing and don't necessarily, and you feel like this stirring inside of you, okay, what's next for me? How am I going to proceed and move forward? And in which direction am I going to go? So keep walking us listeners and viewers through your next step.
my next step was, I will get into this, with my wife, I would say, meaning this. When you get saved, a lot of insight, a lot of mentality, a lot of things change. Not magically, you have to go through the process, but there are some things that makes you as a person, they don't have to change, right? One of the things for me was that I always survived. I always fight for it, right? And I never took a no as an answer. So I was always fighting and going forward and just gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Yep.
It might take longer, it might be harder, but you gotta do what you gotta do, right? And I've seen a lot of people giving up in my life, and I don't give up. I fight, right? And the thing is that I might not always accomplish, what I'm trying to do, but if I lose, I'll lose fighting.
Yeah.
And then when I was there, I saw this girl. She was beautiful, of course, right? And she said no to me. You're like, kidding me? Now, but that was a whole thing because she was different, very different. And I was different to almost everybody else there, meaning that all the other people at this Bible school, whenever a professor would say something, or teacher, missionary, pastor, they would do it without question. I never did that, right? So they would say, Daniel, you got to go and do something. And I said, why?
Yeah.
Why do you want me to do that? Right? I mean, I don't mind doing it, but tell me why you can't
I
do
will, but provide your explanation
it.
first.
Exactly. Yeah, this guy came and say, wash my car.
Yeah.
And I say, well, I see two good arms there. And you have a son, okay? Why do I have to wash your car? Now, if you say, I'll give you $10, I'm hiring you to go and do, or please, can you help me? Do me a favor, right? So, I mean, just don't come and impose just like that. So this guy came and say, wash my car. And I said, why? He said, because I'm missionary.
Do you think that your wife said no to you because she saw that rebellious spirit in you first, or why do you think she's said no to you first?
She didn't know how lucky she was.
Right on.
Now, she say no because she was, in her Christian mentality, was educated in a way that you always do what the authority says you to do, right? And that was the thing. The authorities there, the school teachers and all that, will consider me to be a rebellious person, and because of that, she will say no, because you're not what they want you to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you feel like this tension in you did you feel one that you were, as you were reading the Bible, that God was speaking to you, or do you feel like some things were happening in private with you and God, and versus externally, some people were trying to direct you or position you for something? Was there a real tension that was existing on at the same time?
Well, I would say for me it was not a tension, because I could see clearly God's freedom in the Bible.
Gotcha.
And the contradiction and the way how they would teach it, but different than what they did.
Gotcha.
Their actions was different, right?
Yeah.
I would see how there was actually different spiritual status.
Yeah.
And I don't play that game. And the thing was, I can see transparently clear what the Bible says. And the Bible says that I have access to God, direct access. Like, let me give you an example. They say, if you want to pray for a girl, you need our permission first.
Gotcha.
And I said, well, as far as I remember, when Jesus died in the temple, the veil got cut open, and now there is direct access to God. If Jesus is in my heart, why do I got to ask you permission outside to speak to him that is inside of me, in my heart, Well, they didn't like that, much those kind of answers, of course, And my rebellious was not that I'm going to be punching people. No, no, it was just answering in a way. Now, also got to understand that, yes, I was rebellious. I mean, I'm going to give you that. Of course, I was rebellious. I'm not denying that at all. I was rebellious. But I just got saved.
Hey, bro, were you deciding if you're going to rebel or if you're going to change yourself to woo this woman? Do you remember those decisions?
Yeah, that was a point.
Yeah.
Literally, there was a point where I was so sick of all the hypocrisy there, not quitting on God, but just sick of all the thing. But she was there.
Exactly.
And I believe God used her.
Yeah.
Definitely. Because later on, she started to see some things, not in me, but the way how they would treat me. And then she started to have questions too, right? Long story short, she came back to Costa Rica. She was originally from Costa Rica. She went to Argentina to study the Bible, came back to Costa Rica, and I finished school with her.
Yep.
She came back to Costa Rica. I did not have a coin on my pocket to fly or nothing. So literally, I hitchhiked all the way from Argentina to Costa Rica, basically walk halfway through.
How long? How many days?
3 months.
3 months.
Yep. The only place, that somebody actually helped me to cross was from Colombia to Panama, because, in the border right there is no path unless you go through the militia, and the jungle and all that. Somebody say, you are too dumb. Okay, so let me pay you an air ticket for you to fly from Bogota, Colombia to Panama City. And from there, I just continued on my way to find my wife. Yep.
But you weren't married at the time.
No. We were not married. I'm old school.
But the pursuit was on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She was mine.
You're doing whatever is required.
Yes.
Even if you were willing to have to fight your way through some guerrilla activity. But God provided a way for you not to have to fight. Sort of flew over top of the guerrillas, right? So you get to Costa Rica. What happens next?
first thing that I spoke with my wife now, in those days, I'm talking about 2002, 2001. And back in those days, email was basically it.
Okay.
You didn't have much of a cell phone or texting and stuff like that. So I would write her emails like once every 2 weeks, letting her know that I was on my way. But the one thing that I told her right before we started being a boyfriend girlfriend, our relationship was nothing will be official until I talk to your dad first. Right? Even though I was young, I was still old school.
Good for you, man.
And I wanted to do things right.
Good for you.
So I say nothing will be official until I talk to your father first. So when I finally got to that place, right? First thing that I did is I spoke with her, dad. Now I thought that my sacrifice was gonna be more than enough, right? For them to say, "Oh, sure, let's go." They were like, "Okay, all right, show us your intention." It took me almost 2 years to find a job in Costa Rica, right? Get my legal status, of course, because I was not from Costa Rica. I
Okay.
could see her only Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 hour per day.
That's old school. I mean, we're
That's
talking about some old school stuff right here.
Yeah.
Public setting was sort of out in public places.
Yeah.
So your dating was limited.
Yes. And the agreement was in her house, right? Tuesday and Thursday for 1 hour, and whenever we were in church together. You have no idea all the activities that I invented in church. Every single day we'll do something at church. There, okay. But that
There's
was the
another
thing.
church activity. There's another church
Oh
activity.
yeah, absolutely. But the thing was that I was alone. I was young. I was in a different country, culture, and that helped me a lot to build or let God build me through loneliness. That sometimes people are too afraid of loneliness. I think loneliness sometimes is actually great, so you can actually spend time with God. Now, I'm not saying, and please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying leave your family, leave your wife, and just go in. No, not at all, not at all. But if you're young, don't rush to be a man before you can actually build that man.
Yeah, it's good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's good.
You're in college, you are a young adult, whatever, okay? Take your time, because at the end, the idea was I want to give my wife, I want to give this woman the best man in the world, but that best man in the world was not there yet.
What were your, can you remember why you were more comfortable not rushing your personal development? Why were you okay with being alone with God? Do you feel like you were improving? Were you hearing from God? What was giving you encouragement to chill out and just be okay?
I would say this. In the very beginning of my Christianity, right, even after coming out of Bible school and with her, there was maybe as men some situations, right, that would really make me mad, right? Like, I remember one day I was actually, with my, in that time, girlfriend. We were walking, and I literally saw in front of us somebody who actually was about to assault, to steal from another person. My instinct is to run and do something, right? I'm not against, at least in myself, to go defend and do. I mean, you gotta do it. What scared me was how much I wanted her to hurt the other person. That was the thing, right? Something that was maybe not completely solved yet.
For you,
For me.
not solved inside. There was some reason.
Exactly. And one of my fear was that I've seen a lot of men hurting women, losing control. And I knew what I was capable to do whenever I lose control. So for me, those 2 years before getting married was great for me to learn to master my and I'm not there yet.
Yeah,
We're learning,
That's right. None of us are.
but to start mastering, my persona, my myself, and I teach martial art, right? So a lot of those things. After that, I started teaching martial arts, but to understand that, yes, you can punch with all your strength and hurt, but you gotta find and choose who you're gonna use that strength against. You know what I mean? Your wife, your children, those who are around you are not those.
Yeah, that's right, dude.
Okay, and that was the thing for me. That's why for me, I do, time at time look for it for moments to actually kind of cage myself in my brain and just be there. Just be there. Me now being here in America, driving all over the place, maybe a little much more than what I wish, okay, because it's been too long now,
Yeah.
okay. But it does help me, to actually put everything together again. So you go back to battle again.
So when you were doing this dating, it was taking a little bit longer, but you just talked a little bit about some of God's preparation to sort of help you through why you have such a desire to hurt people. How did you ultimately win her favor? How did you win the parents? And then ultimately sort of you got married at some point.
Yeah, during those 2 years, and that's the thing, and it is not about me, it's about God's work through me and in me, right? Me focusing in improving as a man that one day will be a husband, right? That has to be a provider, that has to do all those things. I was doing it for her, but not to show her. It was just me working on me, right? And she saw that. My in-laws saw that too.
Yeah.
Not that I noticed that they were observing me. No, I was just doing things. I was just doing my thing. Until after those 2 years, I decided, to ask her the question. She said yes. But then I said, well, I got to ask your parents' blessing first, right? I remember that I worked hard to get some money so I can take them to a fancy restaurant. It was an Italian place. And that's where I actually asked them the blessing to marry their daughter. I worked so hard in that little time, like a week, if not more, to be prepared for that moment.
Right.
But the funny thing was here. When I asked them, they say, oh, yeah, absolutely, no problem. Because it was not about those 2 weeks.
Right.
It was about those 2 years
That's
prior.
right. That's right. Yeah.
And yep, they say yes. We got married December 13, and God started, the process of now learning to be a husband, a man, but in practice now, right? She got pregnant years later. We got twins boys. Then later we have a girl, baby girl. And here we are.
Here we are. So you've been married, 13 years, something like that? Something?
Now we're married now 23 we got married.
I got you.
So it's like 23 years now.
I got you. Okay. So, and you've been currently directing the Last Door Ministries now for how many total years?
We switched the name recently. We started 8 years ago.
Gotcha.
As Thrive Vision.
Gotcha.
Okay. But as we grow, as we grew up, in numbers and the ministry and opportunities and so many different things, the initial name was maybe not clear to give the message, right?
Understand.
So
let me back up. Let me cut you off. So you get married, you begin to have children, you're still living in Costa Rica, and before you began to rescue children, what were you doing prior that led you into what you're doing now?
Well, that's a funny thing. I was enjoying Christianity. I was planting churches. I was leading teams from the U.S. to Costa Rica, mission trips.
Yep.
I was training the police of Costa Rica. I was actually having my martial arts studio, okay? And we were doing just fine. We were doing very well, yes, you do have challenge. You do have, things there. But we were enjoying life in general. It was great.
Yeah.
But that was just a little break that God gave me. In the meantime, He was going to call me to do the one thing in which He prepared me my whole life to get ready for that. And that was 8 years ago.
Okay.
When we actually had a team from the U.S. in Costa Rica. And as we were having a sport camp for children, a man approached to me and said, with two little girls, twin girls he has, right? 6 years old, the girls. And he says, if you give me $100, you can keep the girls. When he says that, I thought it was just a joke. I thought he was just trying to be funny. But even though if he tried to be funny, that was not the way to be funny, right? So I asked the community leader that was there in that town about what was happening, and he said he's the drug dealer of this region here. Apparently, he owns some money to some people. That's why he's selling those girls. Those girls are actually his granddaughter. He got in drug his own daughter, this little girl's mom, and the woman is a prostitute in the main town. Okay, and he has the girl, and that's why he's selling these girls. Now, for me, that was just very circumstantial. Nothing good, nothing fun, but nothing too crazy or risky. More than selling these girls, which was
Right.
already a problem, right? I, of course, did not buy those girls because in that moment, I thought, who's buying children in the street? I don't want to get in trouble, right? So we pray for the girls and started to help with some little money through the church, to help those little girls. But about 6 months later, the people in the church that I was helping with some money so they could take care of these girls called me and says, the man took the girls to the main city and came back without the girls. We don't know what happened with the girls. I called the police because I trained the police. I know, the people there. And they say, when they went, they, arrested the man. And when I call back, I was here in America. When I call back, they say, Daniel, he sold the girls to a cartel, Colombian cartel. And the problem is that they have already opened case for organ harvesting. And if we don't rescue these girls in less than 48 hours, it will be too late. That was like a bucket of ice cold water in my face. I was like, what are you talking about? But you're not reading a book, so this is reality.
It's real.
It's real. Meaning that, what do I do now? So I flew back to Costa Rica, and I did participate, with the force, the police, to rescue these girls. And man, praise God, we rescued these girls. They were alive.
And for the listeners, because of your relationship with the police and the intelligence that was provided to the police, you were able to recover the girls pretty quickly.
Yes.
And is that something that's sort of commonplace where they know where some of these victims are and they know where some of these unfortunate activities are going on?
No, the problem is that because of the way how all these things started, we have a hint before. We had a clue where we can actually get to that point. So we have all the previous information. Sadly, when it comes to organ harvesting, which is not as many cases as sexual exploitation. That's the other thing that we do rescue children from, right? But the problem is that you can't be late to rescue a victim of organ harvesting, because if you are late, you don't rescue no child.
Yeah,
no
that's
children.
So here's sort of a good time for me to say, if you got anybody that's listening, we're probably going to begin to discuss some things that are be sort of sensitive, and so younger audiences, a good time for you to dip out and maybe come back. Daniel, you want to tell the listeners or the viewers a little bit about the atrocities of organ harvesting and why there's wretched individuals that would desire to consume organs of a human?
Yes. This is not something that happens only in my country. There happens in different places in the region and all around the world, right? But the problem is that when it comes to sexual exploitation, it's very understandable, even not acceptable, of course, completely not acceptable, but understandable, the mechanic of how that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But when it comes to organ harvesting, the problem is that there are people in part of the world where have certain beliefs, mystical beliefs, that if you eat certain things, you will get the energy of that, right? So because of that, comes to the border of our region to actually, in the mountains, to actually consume babies' organs, along with other things, but mostly babies' organs, right? And pay a lot of money to do that, a lot of money. So because of that, and like I say, there's not, and even though there are cases of organ traffic for transplant, that's just less than 5% of the cases, okay? So because of that, they are not survivors. Unless that you get there right on time before, because of all the intel, the investigation you did, and all that, right? So because of that, in our country, whenever there is a alert of organ harvesting, a possible case of, you got to just drop whatever you're doing and go immediately right now, because you may have just a couple hours.
Yeah. And you have continued relationships in your country with the authorities that permit you to come and be present. I'm trying to be sensitive with my words.
Yeah.
Be present with their activities that are covered under law. Do you want to tell a little bit about the listener or the viewer, sort of what your intent is? Because I know we talked off the record. It's no longer to hurt the perpetrators of the individuals. You have a different mission when you're present with those. Why don't we sort of just pivot briefly from the atrocity side, and you guys talk a little bit about why you're there in the raid.
Well, one of the things that we got to understand first is that the children that we rescue, we bring them to us through two different, operations, right? So we run our own undercover operation to get all the intel that we need in order to identify these children and create the file that we present the police, report, to the human trafficking prosecutor there in Costa Rica, so they can actually release the order for those children to be rescued.
Okay.
The special unit, actually, police special unit for rescue, goes to rescue these children. As soon as they release the order, I'm not advised. I'm aware. They tell me. I go with them to assist them in their rescue. While they take care of the criminals, I take care of the children and get them out of there.
Right.
The other way is that whenever they have all that information and it's their case and they do the whole thing, whenever they're going to go and rescue these children, they call me and I go again. All right.
Good.
But here's the thing. As we started to learn and dig into this human trafficking, you can understand is that not only what you want, but what is God calling you to do, right? What I want, I may not be able to say it here in the mic, because when you are in front of a person who just abused sexually, and maybe even just use the word abuse, I'm just being very polite.
Yeah, it's light.
All right? The least you want is for that person to walk out of there and hurt in their two legs. You just, as a man, and now coming back to my own person, I want justice. I want that person to pay for what that person is doing. If you remember, I told you what happened to me when I was a child. And why in the world would these people will be doing the same thing, and even not, if worse, to other children? Yeah. And there's nobody to help these children. So I want for those adults to actually pay for what they're doing, right? Sadly, because of corruption and because of not enough laws and different things, not always justice takes place. Even though we have some FBI and some law enforcement from the U.S. that come to Costa Rica, so they can actually identify these Americans that are doing those things there in Costa Rica. So when they come here to America, they can persecute them also here, right? You don't find an actually sensation of satisfaction, right? That you go like, okay, that person now is in jail, might be in jail for 20 years or 20 minutes. You never know. Yeah. So what do we do? And what the Lord has called us to do was, listen, leave justice in my hand and bring hope to that child's life that's just being destroyed. Yeah. I did ask God and say, well, can you share a little bit about, I want to bring some justice to you.
If you wouldn't mind, could I just temporarily have some authority?
Right, exactly, there.
Yeah, man.
But say, that child needs more hope than that criminal justice.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about that off the record before we began this, to the listener and the viewer. That's something that Dan and I were talking about previously. Like, that is the mission, is that, and prioritizing bringing hope and salvation in the presence of God into their lives, rather than doing what we want to do and eliminating the life of another. Yeah. It's much easier. We were talking very candidly about the labor, the work, the effort that it takes to bring hope, continued hope, continued involvement in the lives of these individuals, children that you're rescuing. Again, if you're just picking this up or haven't heard previously, they have 3 different homes currently that comprise their family: a boys' home, a girls' home, and a home for teenage girls that currently have children, right? And we were talking about, again, Daniel's tired here in the state. We were sort of joking, and you mentioned it again, that it is a lot of labor for you and your family to continue to move this organization along. And it takes a lot of effort for you to continue to do that. Why don't you tell a little bit more about why it is so difficult, or the effort that's required by you and the staff and the family members to continue to try to make an effort to be used by God to bring hope into these, how many did you tell me, 60, 80 kids?
115.
115 individuals. So speak to us a little bit about that.
Well, first you got to understand the heavy financial burden, that this is, because currently we're not receiving any money from the government. We prefer not to get any money, from the government, because by law there in Costa Rica, in the moment that you receive money from the government, not even talking about corruption and everything else there, you become an employee of the government. Meaning this, they give the money, so now they give the orders to. Okay, so they run the place. So they become your boss.
Yep.
Okay, and we do not agree in a lot of different things, and the way how they want or their progressive mind, I would say, will prefer for these children to restore. They don't understand these children. Because of that, we don't receive any money. So raising funds has been a very challenging, process to actually have our whole ministry organization running. Yeah. But then comes the other, I don't know if heavier, but I would say more collective in our organization with all of our staff.
All right, hold that thought. thelastdoor.org is the website.
Yes.
If anybody wants to make a move right now, they can go to the website. Yes. There's a donation link where they can go ahead and donate currently on the website. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And if anybody wants to reach out, can they email you at Last Door? How can they contact the Last Door?
You go to the website, you have all the information there. Also, for everybody to know, the Last Door Ministry is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3, okay? Everything is in order, papers and absolutely everything. Yeah. So it's also tax deductible.
Okay, good. And if there's anyone who's listening, Daniel and I were also talking off the record before we began, where I'm trying to make introductions to his ministries that could possibly be networks, some endowments and foundations. So there can be some set up reoccurring gifts, because we were talking about 115 children is a lot of children to employ, provide for, but there's also a tremendous more work to be done.
Oh, absolutely.
That could be done.
Yes.
And that's the difficulty. Like, I know you're fixing to tell us a little bit about the labor to take care of the 115, but there's also when there's additional ones and you don't currently have the resources, and that brings up a lot of tension exists. So continue to tell us a little bit about the effort that it takes to keep it all going, man.
We have the 115 children, and by law, we need to have one adult for every 5 children. And but the adult cannot work more than 8 hours per day and only 6 days, per week, which of course, the person needs to be with their family, needs a day off. That means that at the end, we need 4 adults for every 5 children weekly. Okay. And that increased significantly, the number of staff that we have, because of the emotional burden that is to work with children with severe trauma of sexual exploitation from very early age. Here's a concept. One day, a Christian therapist from the U.S. came, to evaluate our team there in Costa Rica and the way how we actually have set all of our ministry. And she came to me and says, the way how you're doing it is the only way to do it, but it's not sustainable. I say, explain me why. She say, you're not here, as far as, what I understand, she say, you're not here just to provide a roof, just to provide food. It's to provide hope. Hope comes once they understand love. When we understand God's love and decide to receive God's love is when we finally have hope.
Yeah.
But in the case of children, same when Jesus said one day, I don't know the exactly word in English, for this verse, but he says, bring to me your
Burdens.
your burdens, right? She says this, pain just doesn't go away. You have to give it. You have to give that pain to somebody else emotionally, right? Your caretakers, your staff are receiving constantly the pain of these children so they can feel better.
Yeah.
But they swallow all that pain, frustration, and all these things. And because of that, sometimes it's hard to keep a caretaker for more than 6 months because they burn out.
Yeah. It's a heavy load.
It is a very heavy load, very heavy load.
Yeah.
If you hear a person in their 20s, 30s telling you about how she was sexually abused one day in her life, it won't be fun. Let me tell you that. But if you hear a 5, 6, 7-year-old child telling you how or what happened or what she felt and all these things, your head wants to just explode. You lose hope in humanity, question God a lot of things. It's just too much a lot of time. Because of that, and that's part of why we wish we have enough resources, because we constantly need to be doing like a refreshment in all of our caretakers, all of our staff, just to bring something back to them so they can actually just decompress. Sometimes we can't, but that the idea is to just invest in them also so they can continue to invest in our children.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perspective that doesn't get talked a lot about. Is from my observation, they use the term victim, child, the one that's being restored. But you bring up a very valid point. And as you were speaking, I was like Galatians 6:2 is about carry each other's burden. We are supposed to, as believers in Christ and as the body, collectively support and care for one another. But I feel like that's something that doesn't get talked a lot about with dudes, men, particularly. Marks of a Man podcast is primarily, I'm sure, a male audience where we don't usually discuss our burdens and the burdens of others. I do think it's important that we don't sell out what has been disclosed in person, right? But I think you bring up a very valid point about the need for resources is to continue to replenish and provide those that are providing love and of themselves. They need a bit of a reprieve as well, So I know we're sort of trying to wrap this thing up, and I'm sure we'll probably have you back as you get back into the States. We're sort of trying to conclude this. I've tried to make a pitch, a ploy, get out there, help Daniel, reach out to him. But I sort of do want to sort of somewhat wrap this thing up and conclude with the hope. As you were talking about, you don't experience God's hope until you experience God's love. Man, and we appreciate and respect what you and your family and your staff are doing in Costa Rica, and as you travel to communicate God's love. And I know that you've encouraged me by just communicating how God provides miraculously through individuals and how you continue to trust in God's provision to extend love and to hope to others, man. And that's why I'm trying to promote you and your story and the ministry, man. So reach out to Daniel and get in touch with him. Until next time, thanks for joining the podcast. Marks of a Man is a production of Men Build Men Incorporated. See ya.